Well, hello, friends. My name is Jed Dorsey. If we have not met, I'm very happy to be here. And I'm here not alone. I'm here with my great friend, Mr. Peter Stout, and our wonderful friend, Diana Shine.
Hi, everyone.
So we are so thrilled to be together with you this morning. And if you saw all the names showing up, I was trying to get people's comments on there as fast as I can, but there's so many, and we are so thrilled that you are here and beyond grateful that you would honor us with your time and presence today. So thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. Peter, can you talk? I think your mic is off, actually.
I was just muted. Good morning, everybody. Happy to have you all here.
Because I saw you saying something earlier, and I was like, I think his mic is muted.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, today I'm going to do teaching and demonstrating. Wednesday, Diana is going to do the teaching and the demonstrating, and then on Friday we're going to kind of tag team where Diana will do the teaching and I'll do the demo. But this is going to be a really fun week. We're pumped up about this. We love these things, don't we, guys?
Oh, yeah. So fun. It's amazing to have so many people here with us and to join us in our art journey. This is just fantastic.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed. I always forget how awesome it is. Every time it rolls around, I'm like getting jitters before the class and stuff. So
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've been working on this for months, you guys. We put a lot of time and effort into this, and we really value you, and we value your time. We value that you would choose to be here with us on a Monday at the beginning, kind of in the middle, I guess almost towards the end of January now. But we're thankful that you're here, and we want to honor your time. Yeah. We don't want to waste it. We want your feedback. We'll give you chances to give us evaluations towards the end of the time. And we really listen to you guys, and we want to do our best to make this as good of a possible learning environment for you as we can make it. So anyways, we will see you guys later. Diana is going to be in the Q&A at the end with me. So if you have questions for us, please stay to the end, and we're going to try to answer any questions you have. But we want to jump into some slides, just kind of show you around the week, and then into the teaching and get things off with a bang.
Let's do it. All right.
So I will switch.
Bye, Diana.
Yeah, see you, Diana. See you later. Okay, so this is the Acrylic Landscape Workshop and Challenge. As you probably know, this is the first session. Now, there are 3 main sessions of teaching. We're going to be giving away prizes on each of those days. And then if you look to next week, we actually have a week from today, we're going to have our big celebration. And that's where we give our biggest prizes away. And we just have a lot of fun together. But so you know, each of these main teaching sessions will be about 90 minutes. Going to have instruction, a demonstration. There'll be a time for the prizes, and then a Q&A at the very end. There are replays available throughout the workshop, and you can find that at thelandscapeworkshop.com. So if you haven't been to the dashboard, that is the dashboard. And I'll just keep re-emphasizing that throughout the day so that you know where to go. And the other part is have more fun with this experience. If you're not yet part of the Facebook group, make sure that you join that, because that's where you can share your work. And the easiest way to do that is to go to thelandscapeworkshop.com and click on the Facebook group. Like I said, I'm going to keep pointing you back there, thelandscapeworkshop.com. When you get there, you're just going to see the links in those black boxes on the left if you're on a desktop, but it'll just be on the top if you're on a mobile device. And you're just going to click wherever you want to go. And if you do that, take you to the Facebook group, it'll take you there, and you'll be able to interact with people. You'll be able to see what everybody's sharing, and you'll be able to share your own work. It's super, super fun to experience this with other people going through the same art adventure at the same time. I want to say a big, big, big thank you right off the bat to our Acrylic University team and our Acrylic University family. Those are the members that are right in among you. You may not be familiar with Acrylic University, but you probably have interacted with a bunch of people if you're in the Facebook group who are already part of what we've done and what we do on a regular basis. So we could not pull this off without a bunch of people coming together and putting their shoulders to the plow and making this work. So thank you so much, Acrylic University team and family. And thank you for being here. For real, you matter to us. You are meant to be here. And just want to start off by saying art is about more than just skills. Art really is an adventure. And everyone has a story, right? I mean, do you have a story? Do I have a story? I think we all could recognize that that is true for each one of us. And I say this today because I know that these things are real for us. There's blessings in life, there's struggles in life, there's redemption, there's hope, there's good times, hard times. And you might be here going through a really great time of life. You know, everything seems peachy and rosy and wonderful. Or you might be here today and your heart might actually be kind of cracked in two. And you might be going through something really hard. And we just want you to know that we understand that, and we're thankful that you're here. We're thankful, and we really want this to be an experience that does lead you toward hope. And so wherever you're coming from today, my other encouragement for you is to be patient, and especially to be patient with yourself and be patient with the process. Art is a process. Learning to express yourself is a process. So let's avoid comparison. We all come from different places. We have different backgrounds. We have different stories. And the reality is comparison is the thief of joy. So we want to just cross that out and not go there. The temptation, if you are in the Facebook group, is to look around and to say, oh my goodness, look at how good everybody is. I don't know if I fit in or belong here. You do. You do belong here. This is for everyone. No matter if you have 25 years of painting experience or if this is your first try, you belong here. This is a workshop, and it is also a challenge. And what that means is that it will probably be difficult at times, but I believe in you. Who's ready today for a little bit of a challenge? Who thinks, you know what? I'm up for this. I'm up for this. It's not all going to be easy, but here's the part that we also really believe in, that you are loved and believed in, and we're glad you're here, and we believe in having fun together. So, yes, are you ready? Let's go. I see it already because I kind of asked something similar, and everybody is saying that they are ready. So my question for you now is, what is your favorite type of tree? Do you like palm trees, fir trees? What kind of fir tree do you like? Cedar? Do you like deciduous trees? Are you a maple, birch? Look at this, red oak, old white pine, walnut, mesquite, ginkgo, maple, sugar maple. Love all trees, cedar, aspen, oak, live oak, evergreen, weeping willow. Hey, that one touches me because our daughter's name is Willow. Beech trees, blue spruce, red maple. I love blue spruce. Walking through a neighborhood close by at Christmas, there are a few blue spruce trees, and I look at them and they always feel like they're kind of magical. Pine, kapok tree. I don't even know what that is. Magnolia, jacaranda. I love it. Okay, you guys, that's so perfect because here's the reality: is there's all sorts of kinds of trees today we're going to be talking about how to paint trees, and we're really trying to make it practical. I believe that what you'll learn today will be helpful in painting trees of all sorts of different makes. 3 practical ways to make the trees in your paintings look more believable and beautiful. And I just want to say this also, don't feel pressure to paint along. You can relax and paint later after you've watched it all the way through. If you feel like you want to go for it, that's okay. I just want you to know that you don't have to do that. So we're going to jump into the demo time right now, and we're going to listen to a little bit of instruction that will give you some principles, and then we're going to jump into the demo. Before we're totally done with the demo, we're going to interject the prizes. We're going to jump in and we're going to give away the prizes. Then we're going to play the rest of the demo. There's only going to be about 10 minutes left, and then we'll do the Q&A after that. So that's what it's going to look like. Peter, we're ready. Let's roll this. Receding values of... All right, so we are looking at trees here, and there's a great poem that I memorized a long time ago by this guy named Joyce Kilmer, and he says, "I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree who may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree." And I might say, we might say, paintings are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Our best efforts really don't represent trees in their fullest, the way that we see them with their majesty and their beauty and everything. But I wanted to draw your attention to this word right here, because if we want to learn how to paint a tree, we need to see trees, and that's what this first part is going to be about. So I love trees, and like I said, I've painted quite a few, but when we start talking about trees, we have to think, well, what type of tree are we talking about? Is it this type of tree? Or is it this type of tree? Or is it this type of tree? And there are just so many different kinds of trees in the world. But really what we're going to be talking about today is hopefully stuff that will help you paint any type of tree, no matter where you live, no matter what you're looking at, because we're going to be really talking about observation. And to do it, I'm going to use this photo here, which obviously does have a few trees, but it's largely not just about a tree, but there's some basic principles that will help us as we are thinking about how we go about painting trees, because we're going to talk about values, and you know, we have our lights, which this is my value scale that I like to use, one of the traditional ones, going from 1 being white to 9 being black, and all the values in between, and basically 1 to 3 is lights, 4 to 6 is midtones, and 7, 8, and 9 are darks. And when we start looking at a scene like this, it's helpful to kind of think back on some ideas that are general principles. And so we're going to look at them right now, because generally the lightest value in a landscape is going to be your sky. That's where the sun is. It's usually lit up more than anything else. So generally, sky. The second lightest value will come on your flat ground. And that is because in general, it's usually going to be reflecting the most sunlight. Either on a sunny day or on a cloudy day, it's going to be catching that sunlight and reflecting it. And generally, it's the second lightest value. The third lightest value is what is called an oblique, and that's something that's at an angle. You could think of hills or mountains or something like that, or the roof of a building where it's kind of at an angle. And then your darkest value will usually come from a vertical. That could be buildings, poles, or in our case, trees. So trees, because of the vertical nature of their trunks, often have dark values when we compare them to other things. But there are always exceptions. And you can see, this tree has a white type of bark, and it's obviously not as dark as other parts of the scene. Although back here, these are other trees, and in the dark areas of these shadows, that is our darkest accent. So this doesn't mean that you can apply this across the board. There are times when the ground is snowy and the sky is dark and cloudy, and the ground will be lighter than the sky. There are always going to be exceptions, but as a general rule, those principles apply and can be helpful for us. So these are a few paintings. This is actually the second painting that I think I ever painted as an acrylic artist, and it was trees. And I painted trees. This is another early painting, and a lot of blobby kind of things going on. I've experimented a lot, and I've painted in different styles, and I've learned a few things. And so I'm going to give you a few key principles that I've learned as we are looking specifically at trees. And this is one. Key number one, soft edges. Trees are not solid objects. Think broken, soft edges where branches meet the sky. And one of the things I've loved about being an artist, and I know you've probably already experienced this, or if you haven't yet, you will get to enjoy this, because as you begin trying to paint things, what inevitably happens is that you start looking at them when you encounter them in the natural world. So as I start thinking about how do I paint a tree, I start looking up at trees and I start noticing things that I never noticed. But you can see how broken this edge is. It's not a solid edge. It's different than this house here. This house has a very solid edge kind of to it, but the tree is very broken. You can see again, this is a very kind of hard edge compared to these trees. And even these different types of trees, these fir trees here, they still have a broken edge, a softer feel as they meet the sky. I'm going to show you a couple different artists here. This is Scott Christensen, a great artist, and you can see again just how soft the edge of these trees, these leaves, as they meet up against the sky. And this is Ovanus Berberian, another really different style than Scott Christensen, but you can see the same thing because he uses less brush strokes, bigger brush strokes, but up here at the top, you can see more of a broken edge, softer transition, light shining through. See that, the scratchy nature of that brush stroke up there. Here's one of my paintings, and you can see this is something that I worked on quite a bit to try to get these edges to be softer, and back here, soft edges and soft edges. So soft edges where a tree meets the sky is one of your keys to remember. A second key is receding values. This again is another principle that is more generic than just for trees, but it is actually quite helpful, because as we're looking at things in the world, we need to open our eyes and kind of turn off the premeditated or the thoughts that have been there in our minds, because as one artist I was listening to recently said, we have these shortcuts. It's in our vocabulary, and we've made these shortcuts with our thinking about what we see also. And so we say trees are green, and yet that will hinder us if we aren't able to observe the differences. And so as trees that are farther away are they change. There's less red and yellow. There's more blue that stays. And there's a less of a dark accent. So you can see that pretty easily here. These trees that are closer to us are darker. And there's more yellow and red. So this green here is more vibrant, you could say, than this green of these exact same kinds of trees that are back here. These have lighter shadow areas and they're more bluish in general. So this is the same exact tree, same exact shadow, but as it goes farther away, it's much lighter and there's more of a bluish tone to it. Same thing if we look at this. This tree has more, it's darker. It has more yellow, even though we can't see that much, but we can see a little bit more of the red tones in here. As that goes farther away, it gets more blue, it gets lighter, the shadows become less dark. And then we can observe that in really great paintings again. This shadow area here is darker than these same shadow areas that are same exact trees back here. This color is more saturated than the shadow areas back here. Now this is in shadow, so it's not this area up here, maybe if this was in sunlight more, we would see more of the exaggeration in the saturation, because this appears pretty saturated because it's compared to a shaded area here. But if you trust me on this, anything that's closer to us will have more saturation. You can see there's more blue and it's less saturated back here than it is, compared to the trees that are closer to us. Again, same thing here. More saturation, deeper shadows, less saturation, more blue as it goes farther away. The same thing in mine, where there's deeper shadows, it recedes back, each layer it gets further back. You see more bluish tones, less dark values. Okay, so key number 3 to create and paint really beautiful paintings of trees is to avoid symmetry and uniformity. So this right here is much more interesting than this. This is kind of boring. And one of the hardest commissions I ever had to paint was one where a person, I never actually met the person, it was done through a gallery, but I was given 4 reference photos of one tree. It looked kind of like this, but there was a lake behind it, but you couldn't see that much, except they were all square images, and there was a tree centered in the picture, and it was in different seasons. One was winter, one was spring, one was summer, one was fall. And I struggled with that because I had no other reference to go from. I didn't know what it really looked like there, and it was basically like one big ball on a trunk, and I had to try my best to make it interesting, to make 4 distinct paintings that were interesting. So I'm just saying, if I had a painting like this, it would have been, or a reference photo like this, it would have been much easier, because by the nature of this shape, it's quite a bit more interesting than this. And even if we're looking at a scene that has more to it, one of the things that we want to avoid is lining each of these trees up and making them identical. See how this is different. There's a gap, there's a small one, there's a different color one, there's another little stand of trees, there's a little one, all of this is interesting because there's variety here. These trees are not all the same up here. There's different kinds of trees, there's different shapes of trees, there's different sizes of trees, and all of this stuff matters if we want to make a scene interesting. So here are the 3 keys that we're going to look at right now. Soft edges. Now this is a painting by Edgar Payne, and you can see these softer edges up at the top. There's a softer transition. The light is hitting the tops of these trees, and it's a softer transition. We've got receding values where these values are lighter The shadow areas are lighter, and it's more of a bluish tone as it goes back. We can really see that exaggerated back here, where that is so much lighter than these shadow areas, and yet it's the same. There are these same trees back there, there's same shadows back there as there are up here. So and then again, avoid symmetry and uniformity. Look how interesting these trees are. Look at how different they all are and how unique, and that's what makes this painting so interesting. And that's why we want to learn from great artists like Edgar Payne. And so having with these things in our minds, soft edges, receding values, avoid symmetry and uniformity, we're actually going to do our first exercise after this. Thank you for being here on this one, and I will see you in the studio. Okay, so I love scenes like this. This tree, as you can see, kind of follows the ideas that we're talking about, where it is not completely symmetrical. It's got different branches going different ways. Also in this scene, we have more sunlight hitting the tree than what we can see in the shadow. So it's like slightly more, like 2/3 in the sunlight, which is also another really good thing to think about when you're painting or depicting a tree. You don't want that sunlight to be 50-50. That again lends itself towards symmetry, and that makes it a little bit more boring. But what I love about this scene is that you got these jagged, hard rocks down at the bottom. You've got the tree that comes up. It of course has the broken edges along the skyline, and it's got some really nice color. And then you have these trees in the background also that reach up, but we can see the distance in the atmosphere in them a little bit more, just that receding of the values as it goes back. They become a little bit more blue. So I'm excited to paint this, and I want to, let me just see here, want to switch over and look at this. So I've got a gray toned panel. Now this is the same as this small one. It is MDF that has been primed, and it's mounted on this wood frame. This one, of course, is toned black. This is actually a neutral gray gesso that I got from Chroma Acrylics in Vancouver, BC. It is not made out of white and black. You can tell that it's a little bit more brown toned, so the gray is a little bit warmer than if it was just pure white and black. It's actually, I think, mixed between white gesso, and they add a little bit of burnt umber into it. So it's fairly neutral. If you have gray 50%, black 50% white, or some mix that's gonna get you towards neutral gray, that's totally fine. It doesn't have to be the exact same as me. What I'm working with today is a limited palette. I've got white here. I actually need to squeeze out some more white, so I'll do that while I'm talking. But we've got white. Let me find my white. Where did I put it? Oh no. Here it is. Okay. We've got titanium white. We've got cadmium yellow light. We've got quinacridone red, or sometimes it's called permanent rose, like in Winsor Newton it's called permanent rose. But if we looked at the back, we'd see PV19. That is the pigment number. That's the more important number. I'm going to squeeze a little bit more out here. And then we've got ultramarine blue, and we have some phthalo green right here. Now this is, what I'm using right here is actually a golden color. It's phthalo green. And if you see, sometimes they will ask you whether it's green, if it's blue shade or yellow shade. This is phthalo green to the blue shade. So I've got my colors out. I'm going to be using primarily Princeton brushes. They are mostly flats, and if I get down to something later where I might pull out a small brush like this, but generally I will complete my paintings with a number 12, a number 10, and a number 6, and I might have several of these brushes out at the same time. For instance, I might use 3 or 4 number 6s at the same time and switch back and forth from color to color. And also, I'm going to do a little bit of drawing with an acrylic marker. If you've never used one of these, they're quite handy. They are much safer to use than a permanent marker. You don't want to use a permanent marker in acrylic painting because it will show through later. These can be found at art stores or on Amazon or something like that. And they come in a pack. That's why I was showing you, you often will get several different colors. You can just kind of choose what color you want to use if you're doing a drawing underneath your painting. For me, I use a marker like this often instead of a pencil because it will stick on the surface better and be a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find out the places where different objects leave the canvas. So the rocks kind of exit the canvas over there, right there. There's a taller edge of the rock that goes out there. And then it looks to me like the top of that tree exits right there. And there's a bit of water. That actually might be up here a little higher. And then the water is maybe in there. And then we've got these trees that come down about here. So this is the general setup for this. Now I'm going to just carry on with getting some of the main big shapes in so that I kind of know the general feel of this scene that we're going to be working on. Now I like these big rocks. Like I said, they're jagged and they provide a really nice contrast in the texture when they are next to the trees and the branches, because those branches are going to be way more soft and the edges of them will be quite light brush strokes compared to the way that these rocks will be bold and direct. So I'm going to enjoy painting this scene partly because of those distinct differences that we'll be able to show. Now the tree comes out and it has a bit of an angle like this at the bottom. And there's actually more than one trunk. It comes out there, and there's another tree trunk that's kind of right behind it that is a little bit darker. I will try to follow the general idea of the branches, because I kind of like the outline of it, even though it's very sparse and not really much of an outline when you look at it, because there's a lot that is really lightly suggested with the leaves and the branches. But what we're going to work on is how can we get these edges to be nice and airy, if that's a good word to use. I want it to feel as if we can see a lot of that sky behind coming through, and it doesn't feel like a solid object. Down here we've got another kind of a bushy, well, I guess it's just a bush, but it's a kind of rounded off to me, so I'm kind of thinking, how can we vary it up a little bit? On this other side, we have more rocks on the shoreline, and we have more bushy things that we can kind of set apart, and then we've got some bigger trees. And then in the back, a little further, we have some hills that we can see in the background. And that's the general picture. There's a little bit of wispy clouds over here, it seems, but really they're not that pronounced by any means. And we don't have to worry too much about getting them in. We can add them later if we want. But that's the general idea here. Now, how I want to approach the painting, there's a lot of different ways that we could go about this. We could paint the sky first, we could paint the tree first, we could throw some water on there, we could paint very thin paints on top, we could try to get some of our more definite values and colors in. And really for me, what I think about in a situation like this is what will be the most helpful way to paint for the most people who are watching. So I don't want to overwhelm you with ideas that will be confusing or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in hopefully a way that will be helpful for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to splash some color on here for the tree. So meaning I'm going to grab a big brush because I want to approach this loosely at first. I don't want to start with a small paintbrush. I want to start with a big paintbrush. And I really want to get in and I want to put some of the main yellows and browns and oranges in here that I see, even some of the darker edges on this side. And then I quickly want to grab another brush and I want to put in some of the sky, and I want to work with those things being wet at the same time so that with that initial color blocking of some big parts of the painting, we'll be able to have wet edges against wet edges and hopefully be able to get some of that really soft effect up there. So here we go. I'm going to jump into it right now after such a mesmerizing and wonderful introduction to this painting. Anyway, I'm going to tape this down because I saw it moving on me and I don't really want that to move. So I'm going to grab this water or this yellow paint. I'm going to dip a little bit into water and I'm going to grab a bit of the red into it. And I'm going to come over here. Yeah, and this just has a little bit of water. I'm trying to follow the general feel of the edge of that tree because as I'm going, I'm kind of covering up some of the marks underneath, so I'm not going to be able to refer to them as easily as I was before. So I'm hoping to just maintain enough of that edge so that I can base the sky off of it. Now I want to bring a little bit darker value into this so that we're getting the feeling of kind of the half turn of the light. Like some of this is hopefully going to be getting the darker values. It's rolling over a little bit. And now we're getting into the deeper colors. And if I mix my red and my green, it's going to create a very deep and rich color that if you don't mix any white into it, it actually will be a good substitute for your black, meaning you can create a black out of those two colors, red and green, mixed together. And so you can see I'm still using my very biggest brush here, and I'm trying to keep it nice and loose and vibrant. And I'm also trying to keep that edge a little bit on the wet side so that I can come back in. And now I'm going to grab two colors. I'm going to grab white and phthalo green, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start to try to mix these together. Now this, I totally understand if this feels a little bit intimidating and a little bit scary, because I'm working relatively fast to try to accomplish some of this. And so if this is too fast for you, that is okay. You don't have to paint it with this much speed. You can go a little bit slower and take it a little bit easier. But I want to just show you the idea of soft edges and one way that you can accomplish that. And in fact, there's going to be several ways that we can accomplish that. So if yours doesn't look perfect right now, that is okay. Mine will not look perfect right now either, just as a heads up and a warning. But I'm trying to get some things that might work later, so that as we go, we can paint over what needs to get painted over, but we can also maybe leave sections that work and they won't have to be painted over. Like, not everything is going to be perfect, but not everything's going to be a disaster either. That's my goal, at least. Every once in a while you paint and it seems like everything is a disaster, but usually if you are able to step away from it, you can find a few things that are better than maybe what you first were thinking. But see, we've got at least here a little bit of an idea of, okay, there's something going on. And you can see I've used my two largest brushes. These are actually size 20. These are massive brushes, right? But I'm just trying to get a big idea down quickly here at the beginning of the painting. And now I'm going to grab another smaller brush. This is a number 12. And I'm going to start putting in some of these next layers. So this one, I'm grabbing a little bit of ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to mix a little bit of this brown color that I had for some of the darker edges of the tree. And I'm going to, actually, I need to mix a little bit of white in there. It's still a little bit too dark. This is this background hill that's at the very, very back. And I'm just wanting to get that color back there so we can move our way forward in the painting. Because I often paint from the foreground to the background, but in this right now, I'm actually painting from the background to the foreground. Pretty rare for me, if you know. I'm going to grab some more green. I'm going to get a little bit more blue, and I'm going to try to mix some of that brown in there again. I need a little bit more blue. That got a little bit more vibrant than I wanted right now. And this is this next layer of trees that's getting closer to us. And again, I'm not trying to paint them perfectly right now, even though if they turn out and they look pretty good. That's a real bonus. I'm hoping for accuracy, but I'm not gonna cry if I have to come back over this, because I'm planning to come back over this. But I'm working quickly still, but you can see that the top edge of this, as it goes into that hill in the background, it's still wet into wet, and therefore I'm able to get some soft edges for the tops of these trees. And just add a little bit more color right there. I see a little bit of light hitting something down there. And so we're kind of getting closer to the area of this where we're getting to rocks, but there's just a few more bushes and little highlights on that far shore we can put in. And also on some of this area right here, where we've got another bush closer to us. I'm excited to get into the rocks, because hopefully, if I can do it well, we'll start to see some of that contrast in the shapes and in the edges and things like that. So I'm going to grab some blue, I'm going to grab some of the red, and then I'm going to grab a little bit more of the green. And I'm trying to create a dark here. I want more blue. Just want it to be, okay, and here we go. We've got, in fact, I want to come back here just a little bit. There's going to be even a little bit of this dark back in this tree. So these are, I'm still using my big brush. And hopefully this value and color is going to work. I think it's good. I think it'll work. I might need to lighten that up a little bit up there. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to just try to get some of the darkest shadow areas that are underneath these rocks, in the shadow, in the crevices, some of these places where not a lot of direct light, not a lot of reflected light is hitting at all. And after I get a few of these places that we see the darkest darks, then I'm going to change my color slightly, make it a little bit lighter, and go around and get some of the next colors and values. So I think I'm already there where we can grab a little bit of white, mix that in. I might have grabbed too much, but we can make some adjustments, get it a little bit deeper again. The thing I love about rocks like this is that there's actually a lot of room for your variations and changes. This is probably one of my favorite subjects to paint, are these rocks. So the reason I am letting this sit is this is still a little bit wet, and like I said at the beginning, the rocks are going to provide a really nice contrast to the tree in quite a few ways. We'll see it in the colors, we'll see it in the shapes, we'll see it in some of the edges. Even though there will be times down here at the bottom where we still want some soft edges. And I'm smudging there. You can also dry brush, or I shouldn't say dry brush. This is wet into wet. This is just grabbing those edges and seeing what will happen if we paint in between the two colors and make it be a softer transition between the values. We can continue to vary these colors on the rocks. Sometimes you can mix the color really well before you put it down. Other times you can let the little, what am I trying to say? The streaks of the paintbrush and the way that it's working together, the colors, you can let that show. All of this is quite up to your personal taste and kind of what you think is going to work. But the contrast for me is I'm still using a big brush. I use even bigger brushes up here, but I'm being more deliberate and slow in my brush strokes so that I can highlight the angles and the texture of the rocks. They're very different. Again, here I come with this intermediate kind of color, or this brush that was fairly dry, and it's just picking up the two colors, the dark where it's dark and the light where it's light, or the mid-tone, and I'm just kind of trying to drag it across different places to make it so that there are some areas that have a soft edge kind of in the middle areas of the rocks. You can notice also that the sky, the blue sky, if you look closely at the rocks, it's getting reflected on the top of a lot of these rocks. You can see a little bit of blue that is on the face, the top face of the rocks, where they're pointed up or facing and catching some of that sky. They're not getting hit with direct sunlight. They're getting the reflected light from the sky. Now look at that color right there. That's a pretty bright little brush stroke. Thankfully, it was still a little bit wet. Okay, so I need to get a little bit of the darkest value again if I can. I want to re-emphasize some of the darks. And again, I'm just kind of squinting my eyes. Sometimes when I get quiet, it means that I'm really concentrating or thinking or observing something. And what I was looking at right there was, where are these darkest values that I can kind of bring back in and establish We don't need a ton of the darkest darks in this scene. There's actually not that much. There's a little bit in the very foreground, a tiny bit around the tree, and then most of the rest is either going to be mid-tone or higher. I'm talking about the value of these colors. That's what I'm referring to. Okay, so I think I've done enough on that for right now. I'm going to put in some real quick brush strokes here for far edge of that bank. Without much detail, just a few brush strokes. And then I'm going to rinse that brush out. And I'm going to put in the water and the light that's coming across and hitting some of these rocks. Even up here, there's a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the water, or I mean the light in, because it will be easier to make my brush darker after I do that than it will be to try to get it back to this highlight color. So I'm just grabbing white, tiny bit of yellow. We'll come in, try to show the sun is hitting rocks. Now that was a weird placement. I actually think I might need to change what I did right there, but I'm not going to do it yet because I'm not sure. There's a lot of shadows over here. This is actually somewhat behind the tree, or at least some of the tree branches are shading some of this rock. And probably too light for right there. Need to add a little bit of this gray into that so that it doesn't stand out so much. Okay. I think that'll be good enough for right now. I don't love that area over here. I don't love the way that that just turned out. Gonna need a bit of work to make me a believer in it, but that's a little bit better. Okay. Now we're going to jump back up into this tree, which is our main area of interest today as we're talking about trees. But I like, oh, I forgot to put in that water. Let me put in the water first. The water is very beautiful, kind of a very light blue. Then it kind of moves into an aqua type color. And then almost there's more yellow in it. It's like that sunlit water look. So I'll grab a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red. That color that I'm grabbing has some red in it, and it needs to be a little bit darker, even though it's nice and warm. Okay, not sure if that's working. Needs to have some more depth to it. Grabbing some darker. Darker green too. I'm actually just thinking about right up here, there's a little bit of in that transition area that is darker. And let's that darker area down here too. Okay, that's better. I'm going to take a brush that's dry. I'm going to try to smooth that transition a little bit. Well, it may not be perfect, but right now it's good enough. Good enough for me. Okay. Back to the tree. So what I want to do now is I want to grab, I'm going to clear off my palette a bit, make room so that we can mix some more of the darker values, the darker tree values, that is. So I'm going to grab some green, some blue, some red, and some yellow. And I'm just looking back and forth. I want some more red in there. A little bit more green and just some white. So this color is not as deep and dark as that really dark color, not there, but it's still pretty dark. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in, I'm staying away from the edges a bit, but I'm trying to make some suggestions of leaves without painting every leaf and without making it symmetrical. Like I'm trying to keep the pattern of this still interesting and asymmetrical. I'm going to grab a little bit more white and a little bit more green, because the variation in this is part of where the beauty is going to come from for you. Is don't just mix one color and think, okay, that's the color of the leaf. You know, all the leaves that are in shadow should be this color. No, that's going to end up being quite boring. And your viewers of your painting, yourself included, will appreciate some of the efforts to create the variety. So I'm not trying to fill in everything. I have to remind myself as much as anybody that you just want to put some in, but you don't want the whole thing. And sometimes you want also to be a little bit bolder, make some brush strokes that are a little bit bigger, maybe even try to get a bit of transition in those places. Think about how are these colors working together. You have a little bit of a warmer, brighter color on your brush. Well, come back in, do a few brush marks over here on that side again. Again, you kind of just want to work in, if you don't want your picture to be boring and symmetrical, then sometimes you need to change the way that you paint, right? Maybe you change the way that you put your brush marks down, right? You use the side of your brush more. That's too bright right there. I don't like that because some of the white came off and it was almost just pure white. But if I want to avoid that, then I need to grab my paper towel, give this a good wipe, clean off some, and then I'll be able to grab colors that are a little bit more pure. These are not 100%, totally pure colors. Like there's still a little bit of a mix because what's on my brush is still mixed, but it's better. And if I want to make it really clean, I'm going to clear that off again, and I'm going to come back into my palette with 100% clean brush and 100% clean colors from the piles of paint. But I'm trying to bring the beauty of this day. You know how it is. If you've taken pictures of a beautiful day, you know how often you get disappointed when you end up looking at your pictures because you think it didn't capture all the sunlight. It didn't capture all the beauty. Well, that's what it is for me looking at this picture, is I know what that day looked like. And the picture doesn't do it justice. So I'm going to have to remember how beautiful those trees were, those leaves were. I'm going to have to bring it in through my memory. And like we said before, we want to keep this. I'm grabbing another big brush here, and I'm going to grab this yellow. I want to get some of this really bright yellow. I want to use some big brush strokes here because, again, I'm not trying to paint everything with a lot of small little detail. I want it to feel vibrant and alive. And part of the way I can do that is by using bigger, broader brush strokes, being more courageous instead of less, being thoughtful and deliberate. Creating a loose painting does not mean that you stop thinking. It also doesn't mean that it has to be done really fast. Sometimes you can paint fast, and it might help if your tendency is to overwork something. Maybe something like that would be helpful. But just because you paint fast doesn't mean that your painting is going to be loose. And it doesn't mean it's going to be nice either. thoughtfulness in your approach is the best. Be intentional. Think through what you're doing. So I'm going to grab a smaller brush here again. I'm going to grab some of my darkest value, or a very dark value, I should say at least. I want to come back with some of these brush marks or these branches. Going to make it a little bit darker. And a little bit over here. That got a little bit lighter on me, but the thing with these branches is that you can't see them all the way from the top to the bottom, right? A lot of times you see portions of them and then it gets obscured by other leaves or branches or things that kind of are in between you and your vision of it. And so you don't want to paint, the whole tree trunk all the way from top to bottom. You want to leave a little room for leaves to cover it. And you don't always necessarily want to use the same exact value or color all the way from the top to the bottom either. Maybe there are places in there that the tree is getting hit with sunlight, and there's parts of that tree trunk or the branches that are lighter. And so you want to vary the color that you have for that. There's a lot of things that you want to kind of keep in mind to help create the illusion of a tree that's nuanced and beautiful. Okay, so I'm getting close on this to, I feel like I'm getting pretty close at least to a place where I can kind of sit and look at the overall scene and maybe go back up into the sky a little bit. Getting a little bit more of this dark, not the darkest, but it's pretty dark. And to come along the edge of that rock, kind of come back up into the shadow edge, shadow side of this tree. Okay, so I'm looking up at the dark areas of the tree, and I'm thinking about maybe trying to make them a little bit darker places. Just want them to tie in with the darks that are down below. a little bit more than they do right now. Okay, I think it's going all right, and I think it's working. Okay, so last thing that I'm going to do is, well, there's two things I'm going to do. I'm going to come over here into that area, and I'm going to go pretty quickly, but I want to put in a little bit more on these trees that are in, I guess they're in the shadow, but they're also just on that other shoreline over there. So I just want to make a few marks that will help distinguish one from the other. Like that there are multiple trees over there. Have a little bit of variety. Adding a little bit more blue to some of this. Going to add a little bit more of a shadow area on some of this also. Down here at the bottom. Okay, and getting close. Okay, so I'm going to grab my light back. Okay, we are going to pause it right now because I'm going to come back in here in just a second, guys, and put in a lot of the final highlights for this demo. And that'll be really cool. But I wanted to honor your time. We tell you we'll be done with kind of the main part of this at 90 minutes. And that means that we need to do just a little bit of work here to give the prize away and relay some information. So I'm going to switch over here real quick and show you again where you can find all the information that you need to really get the most out of this workshop. If you've been watching along, if you happen to drop in and you don't know this, please make sure that you go to the landscapeworkshop.com. That's where all the reference photos are. That's where supply lists are. That's where you can find the links to the Facebook group and all sorts of other good things. So today, if you missed the very beginning, and even if you were here, this is just to reemphasize the three main points that we're trying to kind of work on in our painting of trees is the idea of soft edges as the leaves are going up into the sky or the pine needles are up towards the sky. Often you're going to have very soft edges there. And then the second key was looking at receding values and how can we get a little bit of depth if we see trees in the distance by reducing the contrast in values, bringing up the darkest values. They become a little bit lighter and generally becomes a little bit more blue as it goes away. And then the third key in painting beautiful trees is to avoid symmetry. And I saw some of you say, hey, I love both of those trees that you were showing. I don't find any problem with it. There's a lot that's personal preference, but generally, if you're thinking about design, symmetry is a little bit more boring than something that's asymmetrical. So I have a question for you guys. What kind of what part of that is what you think, that's what I kind of want to work on more. I want to work on soft edges, or I want to work on creating atmosphere with values that go back, or maybe it's shapes. What is it? I see somebody say edges, values. Values. Well, a lot of values coming in right now. Light and shadow, that means values too. Edges, values, shapes, softness, values and soft edges. Yeah, I see somebody throw in rocks, which is great, because I did see somebody say rocks are my nemesis. And that's totally true. Okay. Values. I think if I took a survey, I think we'd find the values is winning in this, because values really, they're so important. And it kind of goes into so many different parts of painting and creating. I'm not surprised. And I think that's probably true for the most of us. But I also think that all these things are very helpful and good for us to pay attention to. And I recommend not necessarily trying to work on all of them, but really choosing the one that you think you need to work on the most and making it the priority that you practice. And then grabbing one of the other ones later as you begin to feel like you've, kind of gotten a hold of the first priority. So this is your homework, guys, is to choose a reference photo, either the one that I provided and you paint this exact scene, or something that you have from your life that you love, or a reference photo that you came across that you love. And then to paint that scene, and obviously, hopefully it has some trees in it, applying these principles that you've learned, then take a photo of your painting, share it in the Facebook group, and submit the form on the dashboard. Again, if you don't know how to get to the Facebook group and you want to do that, that's how you're going to get eligible for a prize. So what you want to do is go to thelandscapeworkshop.com. You're going to click on the link that says Facebook group, and then you can share anything that you have there. You can even share a struggle that you're having. Like, I know sometimes you get through you're trying to practice your painting and you just feel discouraged. Don't isolate yourself. Actually go into the Facebook group and say, hey guys, I'm just feeling a little bit discouraged with my efforts. I'm too embarrassed to even show it. And you know what's going to happen there if you do that? You're going to find people who will encourage you. So that's why we really recommend being in the Facebook group. So today is Monday. On Wednesday, we've got session number 2. So make sure that if you can, you are going to show up, of course, on Wednesday, but also turn in your homework. You'll have a chance to win the prize on Wednesday if you show up and you put your painting in the Facebook group before our session on Wednesday. You want to get that done by 8 a.m. Pacific time. There will be another prize giveaway next Monday, which, as long as you get them in over the weekend, you'll be fine for that. The other thing I want to just quickly mention is that acrylicuniversity.com, that is our main website, and we actually have our membership open. We will talk about that more as we go through the week. But if you have enjoyed your time here, and if you think that this is actually something that you need, I just want to encourage you to stick around, to check it out, and to potentially become a member. Get involved with what we do, because this is what we do. We teach people how to paint freely and have fun and really be part of a community in their journey in art. So this is all good. Make sure you go to thelandscapeworkshop.com. But it is time now for our giveaway. And so, Peter, I want to ask your feedback here, because I have to pull up this really quickly here.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we should be letting people know as we are encouraging them and pointing them in any direction?
I don't think so. I'm sure there's something we might have missed. But feel free when we do the Q&A, we'll answer all kind of stuff. Yeah, joining is a step you won't regret. If you're interested in that, guys, just go to our main website, acrylicuniversity.com, and in our menu, we have a button that says membership, and you can become a member today, and it's incredible. It's incredible. Diane Sarr, how to go from member to life member, just email our support team, support@acrylicuniversity.com. Yeah. Let's do these prizes.
This is exciting. So here's the deal, guys. You are now going to see us spin the wheel of names. So those of you who were able to get in here and give us your information, or sign up for the homework, which was basically by going into our Facebook group and just sharing something. We make it pretty easy. We don't want this to be like something that's super hard. But if you did that, there's a bunch of you here, and we're going to give this away right now. So who's ready for the winner to be revealed? I'm going to click it in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this.
All right. Let's see who won. The wheel is choking on the 2,000 names.
The wheel is trying to turn. And okay, we have a winner. Laura Henley. Perfect. Thank you for, yes, congratulations, Laura. We are super, super excited that you're here. And we will show you right now where you can. There you go. Peter put it up there. If you won, Laura, that's you. Email us at support@acrylicuniversity.com. If that wasn't you, make sure that you do your homework and show up Wednesday. We're going to give away another prize. Now, by the way, I didn't even say what the prize was today. I should have. The prize today was a $250 gift card for art supplies from one of our great suppliers.
That's a lot of art supplies, guys.
Yes,
that's a lot of art supplies.
Yeah. So if you're happen to be Canadian, I think that we're going to give you a Canadian company. And if you're from the United States, we'll give you a company that you can access here in the States. So anyways, we are going to move into the Q&A in just a minute, but we've got about 10 more minutes of this demo to play for you.
Yes.
So put your questions in the chat. We will get to them at the end if we don't get to them in the chat. So make sure you stick around, guys, because we're going to pull Diana in and we're going to answer all your questions after 10 more minutes of this video.
And this is a big part, guys. When Jed adds all the highlights in, it comes to life. So you don't want to miss it. All right, let's jump in.
One more time into the tree, because I just realized I think that I should do this right now and just put in a few pops of the kind of the highlight color. These are smaller brush marks. And I'm planning to paint the sky around some of this again. See how I'm trying to make the shadow edge over here be more like a quarter of the tree, with more of the tree being hit by sunlight. One way that I'm trying to make it asymmetrical. Still trying to leave some of these outer edges to be some of that softness, the soft edges that we put in there at the very beginning. And then I'm going to put some of this highlight bright yellow down here too. Okay, hopefully that conveys it. I want to grab that white. Okay. Okay, here we go with the sky. I'm going to get a little bit bigger brush one more time. This brush. I'm going to clean this off. And you can do more on all of this when it's your turn to paint. And if you're following along right now, you can definitely keep going on places that I'm leaving and moving on with, but I'm going to go over the exact same with the same colors that I used last time, which are, I'm going to grab this phthalo green right here, and that's going to be the bottom of my sky. Probably going to need to get a little bit more of my white out, but so this time through, I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I'm not trying to do wet edges into wet edges this time. This time I'm trying to leave areas that are already soft, and I'm trying to, I'll smudge them, and I might do the dry brush again to get, if those edges end up getting too lost, or if they get hard, something like that, and I want them to be a soft edge, I will come back. But my hope is that through that combination and leaving some of the soft edges that were there in the beginning and contrasting them in some places with putting a few little marks like this where you can see through, I'm hoping that it will convey a nice ethereal, soft kind of quality to the edge of this tree, where all these leaves are touching the sky. And I'm gonna try to get through this relatively quickly so that you can get into your painting. So I'm gonna work with trying to keep that the level of where I transition to more ultramarine blue in the mix. Want that to be straight across. And let's get a little bit more. And again, these edges, this is negative painting when we're cutting around the edges, but hopefully it won't be super intimidating because you can see where the branches are already, hopefully enough to kind of give yourself an idea of the pattern. I'm going to take this dry brush right here and smooth that transition out a little bit. Then I'm going to add a little bit more ultramarine blue. We're going up. And it's going to get darker towards the top of the painting. And isn't this a beautiful scene that we're working on? Just gorgeous. These soft edges lend themselves toward the top of the trees, don't they? I mean, it's like, to some degree, I don't have to do that much in around these edges because they already look nice and soft. So I don't even have to get really close to them or anything. They look pretty good. I'm going to add in just a little bit of that older color because the light, the sun is over here. So I'm going to bring it back in a little bit, the lighter color, so that I can portray the effect of having the sunlight coming from that side. And there you have it. I think that this painting hopefully showed you how you can approach painting a tree, how we can vary the texture of things like rocks with trees, how we can have some soft edges, different ways of approaching it. First, we did wet into the wet sky, and then later we've come back and we've left some of those soft edges, but we've cut back in while it was dry. They're harder edges, but we've done some dry brushing too, and because it already had a bit of a transition there, we're able to make the effect that it looks fairly soft and light. And anyways, I know that you guys could take longer on this. You could keep going and you could make this into a more beautiful masterpiece. But for me, for right now, I'm done. Remember this, you are loved and believed in. Thanks for joining me. All right, there we go. So, okay, we're ready. Peter, I starred a whole bunch of the questions that came through at the end. The first thing that I want to show you though is I'm going to show, somebody said, can you show us the final painting? So I'm going to just show you that right now because now this is okay, there it is. It's that's on my site. Actually, if you go to jeddorseyart.com, you can see it there. Look at it a little bit longer if you want to. That was after I did a little bit more on it after this portion of the demo. But sometimes to make a painting, you know, fully developed, it takes a little bit more. So I actually went over that sky one more time. I brought in a few more details for the final painting, but that is what it ended up looking like in the very end. So now it's time to bring Diana on.
Yes.
And hello.
Welcome back, Diana.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for being in there answering questions all throughout the.
Yes. Yeah, I hope I didn't undermine anything.
No.
All right, good.
Diana, I think that what we should do is, Peter, do you want to just? I've got a bunch starred, and what I was thinking we could do is just go boom, 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 back and forth between me and Diana. And if you have something that you really want to say after I say, then you can answer. But let's just take turns and try to get through these as fast as we can, because I know I star like 45 questions.
Agreed. Real quick, Patricia, just because I'm seeing this right now, can you tell us what color the panel's painted before the class so we can have it prepped? They're talking about Wednesday.
Yeah, I think that's on. Well, Diana, do you know?
I don't remember. I'm sorry. I think I do a wash during the painting, so you might want to leave it white and do a wash with me, I think.
Yeah. Either way.
So many paintings, I can't remember what I've done.
Yeah.
We can put it on the dashboard. We can try to put it on the dashboard. That's the answer that I'll say is, like, if you go there, we'll try to put it on where I'm thinking about, where probably under the day 2 demo. We'll probably try to put something on there just in words like leave your canvas white or tone it this color.
All right. Yeah. We're ready for rapid fire questions.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. Okay. Is there a replay?
Yes, there's a replay, and you can go to the dashboard, thelandscapeworkshop.com to find it.
Awesome. Okay, we did that one. Can this be applied in oil?
Yeah, absolutely. Might your staging might be a little different. The colors, like with oil, you would probably want to lay your darks in first. But yeah, you can do it in oil.
Awesome. Do you have a picture of today posted somewhere? Yes, thelandscapeworkshop.com. Will Wednesday and Friday also utilize phthalo green?
I think Wednesday does. Yeah. How about Friday?
Friday does not. Friday, I have black on my canvas or my palette rather than phthalo green.
Perfect.
Okay.
Question on percent of light values in the tree photo.
I wasn't actually sure, Michelle, what you meant by that. I'm sorry. But if I'm looking at my tree right now, I'd say that it's 2/3 lit and 1/3 not.
Cool. Would you please repeat the homework?
Yes. Actually, let me do this because it'll be easier if I just, can I go here and make this big? Okay, choose a reference photo, paint the scene, and then take a photo and share it in the Facebook group, and then submit the form on the dashboard. And if you need to take a screenshot of this, or just go to the dashboard, because that is where you'll find it right there, thelandscapeworkshop.com. Everything is going to be there for you.
Boom. As a beginner, how do I make rocks look realistic?
Okay. I think, Jed, you painted them in planes. Shadow, light. Just keep them shadow, light, and that halfway point between shadow and light. Don't try to make rocks. Just paint those changes in the direction of the rock like Jed did. Just really simply. Any more ideas from you, Jed?
I think you said it well. What I do usually is I get a bigger brush. I try to make larger angular strokes. I don't usually try to paint round rocks. I try to make them a little bit angular, and I think that that helps. Those are my thoughts.
Awesome. What size canvas did you paint on?
It was a 12 by 12.
Cool. When is the homework deadline?
That is Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. That would be 11 a.m. East Coast time.
Sweet. Okay. Can I paint with a size 12 brush as I don't have a size 20?
What do you think, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Use what you have. Don't run out today in a snowstorm and go get another brush. Use what you've got.
Agreed. Yeah. Are the acrylic markers archival if used under your paint?
That's a really good question. And I actually don't know if the acrylic markers are totally archival. I assume that they're pretty decent that way, as long as it's a normal acrylic, kind of paint in there. But I can't guarantee that. That's why most of the time I use them underneath, and only for silly things like signing my paintings do I put it on top.
Cool. How do I know when the paper on the Stay Wet palette is done? How long does it last?
It's done when it's dried out. When you have paint dried on it, it won't absorb water up through it anymore, and it can't be reused. As long as it's still wet, you can scrape it, you can rinse it, you can flip it over, reuse it. But once it's dry, it's done.
Cool. What is the advantage to have a neutral gessoed canvas for this demo instead of the plain white?
It's all matter of preference. I tend to paint on non-white canvases because I like starting with a color that will blend in more later. But if you started with white and did a wash over the canvas, it's going to effectively work the same way. If you start with white and only paint the little sections one at a time, it might be more difficult to cover the entire canvas and cover all the white, but it's not going to be super hard on a small canvas to do that.
Cool. Is it a deal breaker if you start with a white canvas, and can you use a pencil to sketch in the drawing?
Of course you can. You can start however you want. Really, these are ways that Jed and, when I do mine, the way we approach problems, but you can be your own problem solver and do it how it makes sense for you.
Awesome. Are you supposed to paint flat or on an easel?
Wait, I'm going to show this one, Peter. I put this
Okay.
on here because I wanted to say something. Phyllis
Yeah, go
says,
for it.
got to work on not beating myself up. And we just encourage you, if any of you are feeling like you beat yourself up, that's very common. Most of us struggle to some degree with being hypercritical of ourselves and think everybody else is better than us. And just know that you have what it takes to do art. Art is part, it's not as much talent, quote unquote talent, as it is learning skills and applying yourself to what you're trying to do. And we believe in you, and we've seen so many people go from not really knowing anything to being able to portray what they're looking at accurately and with beauty. And we believe that you have that inside you too. So yeah, make sure you're not beating yourself up, because we believe in you. And I bet that there's people who would see what you're doing and think that it's absolutely great, just like you look at other people's work and think that it's great.
Consider it to be play. And, kids don't beat themselves up when their block tower falls over. It just does, and they put it back up. Play with it. Play with your paints and have fun.
Yeah. That's really the best. I love that. Okay, Diana, you answer this one.
Oh, again, this is a preference thing. When I'm painting on my own, I like things up because I have a back that tends to go out. So I like to stand up straight. When I'm painting for demos, I have things on a slanted surface so that my palette doesn't just slide all off. My paints don't slide off the palette. But it's really up to you. Whatever you have at hand, whatever's convenient, whatever works for you, how your body works. It's all good,
Yeah. Can we color white gesso with a bit of paint if we don't have colored gesso?
Absolutely. That is actually what mine was. Mine was white, and then I just put the color, the tone color on it.
Excellent. Can you please provide the pigment colors of what you're using?
Yes. I think that if you go to the supply list that is on the dashboard, I believe that they're there.
Yeah.
Okay. What medium do you use when working outside?
Oh, for me, I don't use mediums unless it's hot and dry. If it's hot and dry, I will use a slow dry medium in my paints. But if it's like I'm Pacific Northwest, usually not hot and dry. So nothing, just the stay wet palette.
Cool. Why hard body paint versus soft body? What are the advantages / differences?
I like how you said hard body. I believe it's actually heavy body paint, but hard body sounds like a workout program or something.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I just like the thickness of it. I like the paint that I use. It smooths out fine for me, and at the same time, like we've said already a few times, it's personal preference. I know a lot of people use soft body paints or fluid paints, and they really love those. So if you found that you were preferring those types of paints, then I would just say roll with it and go with it. Just find what works for you.
Agreed. How wide is the size 2.0 brush?
I think that's supposed to say 20.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Diana, I don't know if you have one. I think that's about 2 inches.
I have a couple of those that I use to put washes down, and when I'm painting bigger, I use those a lot.
Cool.
Yeah.
My palette always gets so muddy and full of colors. Any tips how to clean off your palette and get more room?
Well, the way that I do it is I just take my palette knife and periodically I will clean off the mixing area. I don't usually try to scrape back where I put my paints on the palette too much, but I usually have a pretty decent sized area in the middle, and that's the area that I clean with my palette knife. And then if I need to, I will spray it with a little water or dip my paper towel in a little water and wipe it down a few times with paper towel if I need it to be extra clean.
Awesome.
One of the things I noticed in your palette, Jed, and I do in mine, is I put my 3 primaries in the corners so that I can mix around the color wheel. And that keeps your paints really clean too. You're not dabbing little colors all over the palette, making it dirty all over the place. Your colors are in a sensible location on your palette in a color wheel. And it really doesn't get as dirty as if you just mix a teeny little bit all over the place.
You're really good at that.
I may have missed the answer. Which red is better, quinacridone magenta or crimson?
Diana, I just am going to let you answer that.
I think it's the paint number it's quinacridone primary magenta. Quinacridone magenta is more a purpley. It's a darker, cooler color. So I'm not sure if the crimson is the same pigment number or not. I'd have to look at the tube.
Yeah, and if you're asking what is better, I think you probably are referring to what's closer to what I have as permanent rose, or quinacridone red. And my guess is that it's honestly either one will work fine for this demo. Worry less about which one is better and just see which one works in a, like how do they compare to each other, and you'll learn actually more about how the paints mix through experimenting with different colors.
How do you choose between choosing a warm red or blue versus a cool red or blue when using a limited palette? What do you look for in your reference in order to make the decision?
Is this me?
Yeah.
Because I think that when you choose a limited palette, your painting is going to look cohesive and it's going to look balanced, no matter which blue you choose for it. If you're trying to match the sky in your photo, there's some other work you have to do. But if you are trying for a limited palette to make a beautiful color harmony, just pick one. Jed, how about you? What do you do?
I do kind of what you do, Diana. I think you do it more thoughtfully than me. Usually what I do is I just see what's on my palette at the time and I use whatever's there, unless I really think that I need to mix a different direction than, say, I have a cadmium red and I know I want to mix some violets up. Well, I know my cadmium red isn't going to mix the best violets, so maybe I'll switch to something that's more of a magenta. But I tend to not worry too much about the actual colors that are on my palette. Are you going to show us your finished painting? I already did. I will show it again one more time if you want to see it.
Awesome.
There you go.
Do you paint in a specific order each time, or does it depend on the painting itself or how you're feeling that day?
Oh, go ahead, Diana.
I paint however I feel about the painting, whatever the painting is like suggesting to me. As an oil painter, you need to start with your darks or your lights. Your paint gets muddy and what they call chalky, but that doesn't happen in acrylics. In watercolor, you have to start with your lights. Otherwise, everything gets too dark and muddy. But in acrylics, you can paint however you want, front to back to front, dark to light, mid-range out. It's all up to you. It's much more free.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you plan to participate on Blue Sky for those of us planning to leave Facebook?
Claudia, that's funny. I highlighted that because I've never heard of Blue Sky, and I just thought I should look that up. So we don't have any plans on that. I've never heard of it until now, but thank you for bringing it up.
Is there an alternative to phthalo green? I have lots of other greens.
You know what you can do? Jen and I both started using phthalo green when we went to a workshop together, and it was such a beautiful, gorgeous color. But I found you can mix a look-alike if you use phthalo blue green shade and a little cad yellow light. It can make something similar, but it's such a perfect color for getting translucent skies and and beautiful, rich darks that it's almost indispensable now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel as if there have been a couple times when I've tried to make phthalo green, and then I've also tried to make phthalo blue out of my phthalo green and ultramarine blue. And you just realize, you can get kind of close, but if you really need that color, you don't really have an alternative.
Yeah.
But in the case of us, what we're doing today, you could use something like, I'm just going to throw out a color like Viridian, or you could probably even like a Hooker's green, a dark green. It's not going to do the same things. Like you would want to be careful about using it in the sky in the same way, because it would probably mix quite a bit differently. But for the other parts of the painting, it would work and you'd be fine.
Awesome. Successfully, can you have more than one focal point?
Michelle, I like to think about focal area. I got that from another artist, and I just, I don't know. I was even watching an artist recently who said he doesn't even think about focal point, because he was asked during his demo, what's the focal point? He goes, I don't think about focal point at all. All I do is try to make a great painting. And it just kind of hit me like, I think there's times when we get too caught up in, what's the focal point? What's the focal point? And you know what? Most of the time, I'm not actually thinking about that when I'm painting. I'm not going, and this exact thing is going to be my focal point. I know some artists who really pay careful attention to it, and it probably helps them. For me, it's more like if I have a problem in the painting and I need to solve that, then I'll think about it. But most of the time I'm kind of just thinking, this is an interesting subject and this is an interesting setting for that subject. And I think this will work as a painting.
Cool. How many coats of gesso do you use on your canvases?
Well, I buy them pre-gessoed. So, and I usually use a flat panel that isn't a canvas. So it's nice and smooth and flat and pre-gessoed. So that way I don't bother with it.
Me too.
Awesome. So is the light coming from the right side of the painting?
Yes, it was in that painting coming from the right side.
Awesome. Do you want it to be dry before going over a spot you worked?
That depends on what color the spot is. If you're working with a similar color, no, you don't need to let it dry. If it's a completely different color, let it dry before you go back over it, or it'll get muddy. But sometimes that transition area is nice to have the two colors mixed up. It all really depends on your painting.
Awesome. Yeah. It looks like you're barely touching the canvas. True?
I put that in there because I think, no, probably not true. There's times when I'm doing lighter brush strokes, but it probably was just the way that it looked to you. I'm putting quite a bit of paint down most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, we did that. What about the opposite side of the river? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, who knows?
Sorry, Denise. Do you keep the paint you scrape off?
I do. I have a little fishing tackle box. I put it back in if it's not all dirty. If it is messed up, I sometimes just combine it together and make a gray panel for next time. But often I'm bad and it dries out. So then it gets thrown away.
Lisa says, "Oh, just stuck my brush in my coffee."
Yeah, I wanted to leave that in there because I thought that was funny.
That's something I would do. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you always work standing with your painting upright? Should I try to do this? I think we kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
How do you avoid overpainting?
That's a great question. I think that's probably one of the top 5 questions that people ask.
That's
and right. I think that you have to start by being very intentional with what you're trying to do. And then for me, if I'm unsure of what I'm doing at any point in the painting, especially as it's getting a little bit closer to the end, I generally try to stop, because if I don't know what I'm doing, what I'll probably do 90% of the time is stuff that isn't going to help.
That's right.
And I find that taking a break from the painting will allow me to see it with fresh eyes and then do something intentional again.
That's right. That's right. If you can't find out what is the right next move, I end up, not you, me, I end up flailing and just splatting paint on for no reason, whatever, just trying to see if something sticks and fixes it. So when I get to the point where I can't think of the next best thing to do, I stop, because 100% of the time I'll overwork it, flail away at it, wreck what I have, wreck the freshness. Yeah. So it's just, if you can think of the brush mark that'll make this closer to your intention, closer to what you wanted from the painting, put it on. If it's just going to make it tighter and you're out of control and you want to control it, stop. Yeah. Step back at least.
How did you get the teal color?
Yeah, that was phthalo green, ultramarine blue with white in it, just mixing it in various directions.
Awesome. You taped your sides. Best to keep sides white canvas? ?
Well, actually, these are panels. They're wood panels, and so they're actually wood on the side. And my reason for taping the sides is just to hold the canvas in place. It doesn't have to do with keeping the sides clean.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. If you have a previous painting this dry and you want to make adjustments with soft edges, do you have some techniques to share?
Sure, you can just put the wet paint down. Like if the edge of your tree needs a soft edge, put the wet paint of the tree down and just take your thumb and mush it into the dry paint. That works. Or if you've saved your two wet paints on your palette, you can put them side by side and soften them together.
The only thing that just came to me, which I don't really do very often, but as you were talking, Diana, it just came into my mind. The other thing you could do is put down some medium, some slow dry medium over the dried, anywhere. You could cover the whole canvas, or you could just cover the area outside of where you're going to be painting, so that there's a little bit of a margin there, so you can overlap into that wet area, the wet medium. And then you could really feel a lot of freedom, I think, going in and brushing into that medium, and it could probably do a pretty good job of leaving some wet, soft edges.
It looks quite different from the reference photo.
Hopefully.
Reference photo is just the starting point, the jumping off point for creative ideas and making a painting and not just a copy of a photo. You use it like a little trampoline and shoot yourself into the sky creatively.
Amen. Okay, I think we probably need to wrap it up.
Yep.
But real quick, I want to answer this. Karen Vaughn asked, what are the upcoming monthly themes for AU? This month we're doing fur, fins, and feathers. So wonderful workshop from Diana on that. We have guest artist Ryan Jensen.
Ryan Jensen, an incredible artist. He did the guest demo. It was an interview. It was super cool. It was like this interview where he shared tons of his thoughts, and we walked through about 3 or 4 of his paintings, and we just kind of talk through the different stages of the paintings. And then we have Angela Banderka doing the Discover Your Voice, and she's going to be painting the cutest little puppy dog ever. Or maybe that already happened on Friday.
Yeah, already happened on Friday.
Yeah.
And then next month, I believe we're doing the Golden Hour.
Yeah,
we are. Hour.
Diana's kicking that off like always. And so she has a wonderful demo on how to paint the Golden Hour when things get really beautiful. It's a fantastic fantastic
Yeah.
presentation. So
And I
And
just
then-
finished the workshop for greens too,
Yeah.
1,000 greens. And for those of you who had a million questions about color mixing, this will answer about 500 of those million questions.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because the theme for March is 1,000 greens, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that green is one of the hardest colors. We've talked about this a bunch of times, but so many times people, just struggle mixing green. So
Yeah.
we thought, let's just go at it as the theme for the month, and I think you're gonna love it. If you've ever wanted to paint the vast variety of greens, I think this is going to be super helpful for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, don't hesitate. Hop into the membership if you feel like it. We'll be talking more about it later this week, but it's awesome. It is
There's
awesome.
lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff coming up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's going to be super fun. And guys, so Wednesday, Diana, what are we going to be looking at on Wednesday?
We're talking about water, and I have a pretty decent sized slide presentation showing you the different aspects to look for when you're going to paint water. And then I do a demo that I'm trying to incorporate those ideas into. But like usual, I really go overboard on the teaching parts. But there's a lot of good information there on painting water, all kinds of water.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
I see this question from Michelle. For the golden hour, do I become a member to take? Yeah, that's for members. So you would want to join the membership before we close the doors, which will be in about 9 days. So, and then we're going to do that in February is the golden hour. But yeah, guys, it's going to be so fun. I just know that so many times we've seen it in every workshop that Diana ever teaches is people just leave kind of mind blown and so many things. And I remember this water that you're going to capture a whole bunch of stuff that's going to help you. Water is everywhere. There's just so many things that you're going to learn on Wednesday. So make sure you come back. It's going to be a great time. We're going to give away prizes for your homework this session, and we're just going to keep this thing going. And we want to say thank you for being here today. We know that you took time to be here. We're so thankful. I'm looking at the number right now here at the close of the day, and we still have 1,600 people with us. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us for over 2 hours now.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Absolutely. All right. Love you guys. You're loved and believed in. We'll see you Wednesday. Bye.
See you Wednesday. Bye.